You know, it really is amazing at the very moment that America is crying out for change. More than 7 out of 10 Americans think the country's heading in the wrong direction. The other party has nominated someone who literally personifies a failed establishment in Washington, D.C. Stale agenda, the most predictable of names. So North Carolina, I got a favor to ask. Would you just make sure in this great state that Hillary Clinton is never elected president of the United States of America? Please do that. Because you can't. Because, you know, the stakes in this election go far beyond whatever the media is focused on any given day. It really has to do with the things that reach your kitchen table, and the things that keep Americans awake at night. It's about security. It's about prosperity. It's about the Supreme Court of the United States of America. And it's about integrity in public life and the expectations of the American people. You know, despite traveling millions of miles as our Secretary of State on the security front, the truth of the matter is the world is more dangerous today than the day that Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama took over our foreign policy. Our allies are less secure. Our enemies are more emboldened. We cannot have 4 more years apologizing to our enemies and abandoning our friends. For the world to be safe, America needs to be strong, and Donald Trump will lead on the world stage with American strength. And that all begins with recognizing that America, we've achieved peace. We've achieved peace in America and in the world through strength. We stand today at a time, believe it or not, with the lowest troop level since 1940 in the U.S. Army. We have the smallest number of ships in the United States Navy since 1916. The Marine Corps has been hollowed out. The 36 battalions that our warfighters say they need, it's only 23. And in the Air Force, we're down to a little more than 1,100 fighter attack bombers. The average age of our aircraft is 27 years old. That's older than most of the men and women that fly them for us. I will tell you, men and women, with so much of the world spinning apart, we have to return to the principle that there's only peace through strength. And when Donald Trump becomes President of the United States of America, we will rebuild our military. We will restore the arsenal of democracy, and we will stand tall and stand strong for American security and world peace on the world stage. But it's not just about our national defense. It's also about judgment. And it's so important that in the days ahead, the 28 days ahead here in North Carolina, a state that will loom so large in the outcome of this national election, that we talk about the record. It's not just a record of cutting back, but it's a record of Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton that's literally resulted in weakening America's place in the world. I mean, if you looked at a map of the wider Middle East in 2009 when they took over our foreign policy, and a map of that today, you almost think you're not looking at the same part of the world. The wider Middle East is literally spinning apart. An emboldened Russia has overrun Crimea, has built all new alliances with the leading state sponsor of terror, as well as the murderous regime in Syria. We see China building islands and military installations in the South China Sea, and we see ballistic missiles being fired and nuclear bombs being tested in an increasingly aggressive North Korea. You know, history teaches us that weakness arouses evil. And Donald Trump and I know that Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama's foreign policy of leading from behind, moving red lines, feigning resets with Russia, the rise and rule and reign of ISIS, and paying ransom to terrorist-sponsoring states is all emblematic of that weakness. promise. When Donald Trump becomes president of the United States, we won't be paying ransom to terrorist-sponsoring states. They'll be paying the price. If they threaten the American people, detain our citizens, or do us harm. But Hillary Clinton's record specifically is something we need to talk about. Okay? And so I'll remind you of it. Remember, it was Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State, who had the responsibility to renegotiate what's called a status of forces agreement. Right, Congressman? 2009, Iraq was essentially stable. During my 12 years in Congress, I actually traveled every year for 10 years in a row downrange to visit our soldiers in Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom. I saw the extraordinary sacrifices. We saw from afar those difficult days in 2005 and 2006. But with the surge in early 2007, the American soldier won the peace in Iraq, and it was stable in 2009. It was a great cause. It was a great cause. I traveled downrange from my most poignant moments of the times that we've stood quietly at gravesites in Indiana with our fallen. When I think of those sacrifices, and I think of the way that ISIS has risen up, because Hillary Clinton didn't renegotiate a status of forces agreement that would leave some American forces in Iraq, or ISIS has literally overrun vast areas of the northern half of Iraq, and now the American soldier, bit by bit, is being called to go back in and win it again. And I think of the challenges behind us and the challenges before us. I see a few familiar caps in the room. If you wore the uniform of the United States of America in the near term or long ago, would you just raise your hand and allow us to thank you for your service one more time? Thanks, everybody. Thanks for your service one more time. You know, it was Hillary Clinton also, when she was Secretary of State, that initiated a disastrous agreement with the radical mullahs in Iran. It's truly extraordinary to think that while in my debate the other night, my counterpart was literally boasting of the Iran nuclear deal as an accomplishment. It literally was. I mean, in between interruptions. The truth is, when I was in the Congress, we worked in a bipartisan basis. A bipartisan basis to put the most punishing sanctions ever in the history of this country on Iran. And here was the deal. They would never be lifted until Iran permanently abandoned its ambitions to have a usable nuclear weapon. And yet this administration made a deal, $150 billion to the radical mullahs. And when the time frame for the deal runs out, no restrictions. I mean, in a very real sense, they guaranteed at some point in the future the leading state sponsor of terror will have the most powerful weapons in the world. And lastly, it was Hillary Clinton and her State Department who left Americans in harm's way in Benghazi. And after 4 Americans fell, she told the families at Dover Air Force Base that it was because of a filmmaker in Florida, even though Congress was able to find evidence of emails, one to her daughter, the very night of the attack, that described it as a terrorist-style Al-Qaeda attack. On the anniversary of 9/11, when she was confronted by a committee in the United States Senate for the way the administration and she personally had obfuscated and told a different story about the cause of the attack, she said, and I quote, "What difference at this point does it make?" Let me say this. Let me say this from my heart. As the father of a United States Marine, I want to tell you this. Anybody that said that, anybody that did that, should be disqualified from ever serving as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the United States of America. And I mean it. You don't leave Americans in harm's way. Ever. You go rent that movie, everybody. You go rent that movie 13 hours. It wasn't 13 hours before we sent help. The State Department under Hillary Clinton never sent help. The call came. As Donald Trump said on that stage last night, the call came. It wasn't at 3 in the morning. It it was late afternoon. You know, the American people know. For the world to be safe, for our people to be safe, America must be strong and have strong and unwavering leadership. And that begins the day that Donald Trump is inaugurated as the 45th President of the United States of America. The days of American weakness are over. So it's about security abroad and the unknowable threats that have even been inspired in our homeland, but it's also about safety at home. And I just want to tell you, I know it's been a challenging time here in North Carolina for men and women in our law enforcement community. There's a number of members here who wear the uniform of law enforcement at various levels. Would you just take a moment to tell all them how much we appreciate the job they do to protect our families? Promise you, as the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the United States of America, a President Donald Trump will stand with law enforcement at every level. He will make sure they have the resources and the tools to protect our families and go home safe to theirs. And we as a nation will restore law and order to every city and every community in the land. That's probably why Donald Trump was actually endorsed by the 330,000 members of the largest police officers union in America, the Fraternal Order of Police, to be our next president. So it's about security in these uncertain times, but it's also about prosperity. You know, I can tell you, your Governor Pat McCrory and I can attest to the fact, any progress you've made here in North Carolina, any progress we've made in the Hoosier State, have been in spite of what's coming out of Washington, D.C., not because of it. I mean, we're in the midst of the weakest economic recovery since the Great Depression. We have the lowest labor participation rate in this economy since the 1970s. I mean, don't be fooled by that unemployment number. It just bounced up a little bit. It's supposed to be 5%, but there are literally millions of men and women in this economy who've just given up looking for a job. And today there are millions more Americans living in poverty than the day that Barack Obama became president of the United States. Last month alone, the most powerful economy in the history of the world only created about 150,000 new jobs. A 1% economy. And Hillary Clinton's plan? More of the same. Some people say that sometimes, and Donald and I hold to the view that essentially she's running for a third Obama term, but I don't think it's going to be the same. I think it's actually going to be more of the same. She wants to raise taxes. She wants to increase spending, increase deficits and debt, expand Obamacare, and expand the war on American energy that's stifling American jobs. And they tell us that eventually things will get better. Actually, they just tell us this is the best that we can do, right? But we know better in North Carolina, don't we? It's not the best that we can do. It's just the best they can do. And when Donald Trump becomes president of the United States of America, we're going to get this economy moving and create millions of jobs for working families. We're going to do it by putting common sense, conservative principles into practice. I always love to say every time you try conservative ideas, they work. Right? It's worked in the Hoosier State. Frankly, it worked in the 1980s all across America. It worked in the 1960s when President John F. Kennedy did it. Pretty basic description. Hillary Clinton wants to raise taxes by $1 trillion. Donald Trump and I are going to cut taxes across the board for working families, small businesses, and family farms. We're going to lower marginal rates. We're going to get rid of death taxes once and for all. And we're going to lower business taxes in America so American companies can compete and grow jobs here in North Carolina and not see them grow overseas. And Because regulation is a form of taxation, and that whole, I call it the tyranny of the acronyms. Right? The EPA, the OSHA, the DOE, the ABCDEFG, cry uncle, right? I mean, Donald Trump's going to sign a moratorium on day one. No new federal regulation. And we're going to repeal every Obama executive order that was signed into law that's stifling growth and jobs in this economy. And lastly, the second to last, Donald Trump, when he becomes negotiator-in-chief. There's a school kid sitting over here. That's not in the Constitution, actually. Not yet. When he becomes negotiator-in-chief, we're going to have somebody that negotiates trade deals that work for American workers. We're going to renegotiate NAFTA. We're going to get away from this TPP, and we're going to roll our sleeves up and do deals that put the American economy and the American worker first. Trade means jobs, but it's going to mean American jobs. And lastly, Donald Trump and I know that among the God-given blessings of this nation are our vast natural resources. So day one of the Trump-Pence administration, the war on coal is coming to a crashing end. The liberal climate agenda is over. We're going to develop an all-of-the-above energy strategy that calls forth the resources of this land and provides low-cost energy to every American. And I know I said that was last, but there was one other thing I just want to mention. I don't know if you heard what Bill Clinton said the other day. I mean, when I was in the Congress, Congressman knows this, we fought tongue and claw against Obamacare. But they got it done. They promised you could keep your doctor. They promised you could keep your insurance if you like. Right? And now you've seen premiums go up, coverage has gone down, and even Bill Clinton said it is the, quote, craziest thing in the world. Even with the Clintons, sometimes truth happens. I think she said last night, though, he clarified that. Truth of the matter is, Obamacare is a disaster. It's stifling jobs in our economy. And I promise you, Mark, I know the Congress convenes before the president is sworn in, so if you all wouldn't mind, just roll your sleeves up, pass the bill, because if you have it on his desk, I promise you, we'll repeal Obamacare day one. And we will start over. You got it. He's rolling them up. We're going to repeal Obamacare lock, stock, and barrel, and we're going to replace it with the kind of health care reform that empowers patients, allows you to choose your doctor, and captures the power and energy of the free marketplace. We're going to lower the cost of health insurance and not grow the size of government. We'll meet our health care needs with the free market the American way. And next, this election is about security, it's about prosperity, but it's also about the fact that it seems like in the last 7.5 years, there's been no aspect of our lives too small for the present administration to supervise. You get that? No provision of the Constitution too large for them to ignore. So as this election approaches, let's remember we're electing a president for the next 4 years, but that president will probably set the course and direction of the Supreme Court of the United States for the next 40 years, and we better think about that very carefully. Better think about it. I mean, elect Hillary Clinton, you better get used to more unelected judges using unaccountable power to make unconstitutional actions. You heard her last night in that debate, checking off her checklist of all the things she wants to make sure that the Supreme Court does. More legislating from the bench. You elect Donald Trump as President of the United States, we're going to appoint men and women to the judiciary at every level who will uphold the Constitution of the United States of America in the tradition of the late and great Justice Antonin Scalia. Strict constructionists who will interpret the law and not write the law. So let me say this to all of you in North Carolina, if I can ask a favor. For the sake of the rule of law, for the sake of the sanctity of life, for the sake of the Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States and the right to keep and bear arms, for the sake of all of our God-given liberties enshrined in our founding documents, we must decide here and now that the next president to make appointments to the Supreme Court of the United States of America will be President Donald Trump. So those are your big issues. It's security, it's prosperity, and it's the highest office in the land. For men and women, it's also about the fundamental expectation of the American people of honesty in public life. But I don't know about the rest of you, but it's extraordinary for me to think of the avalanche of scandals and controversies and conflicts of interest flowing just out of the recent Clinton years in public service. I mean, just to break this down for you. So she was Secretary of State of the United States, third-ranking constitutional officer, in charge of the foreign policy of this country. And at the same time, she had a private family foundation that accepted tens of millions of dollars from foreign governments and foreign donors. Now, you got to be clear. Foreign governments and foreign donors can't contribute to American politics, but we then found, because even the New York Times broke the story that she had a private server, we found through emails that had been recovered that half of the meetings while she was Secretary of State were given to major contributors to her private family foundation. And of course, when the private server was discovered, as Donald Trump pointed out last night, and Congress had issued a subpoena for the 33,000 emails, she used high technology called bleach bid and hammers to destroy the emails and the BlackBerries. Hammers. I just, I'm old enough to remember a president who erased 18 and a half minutes and they ran him out of town. And Hillary Clinton deleted more than 18,000 emails that were under a subpoena from the United States Congress. Men and women, that doesn't look like politics to me. That looks like obstruction. And the American people aren't having it anymore. They're just not having it. Last night when she was confronted on some of the latest emails that had found their way back into the public domain, including one where she literally said, in order to be, quote, successful politically, this just came out on Friday, that you have to have, quote, both a public and private position. And last night when she was confronted about that, during the debate, we got a lecture on Abraham Lincoln. Did you hear that part? I had a hard time following that. I don't know where we were going on that. Well, let me say, as a member of the party of Lincoln, I would really prefer if dishonest Hillary did not associate herself with honest Abe. Men and women, enough is enough. There is a cure to the avalanche of controversies and scandals coming out of the Clinton years. Not just the last 7.5, but the last 30 years. And that is to work your heart out every day for the next 28 days to elect Donald Trump as the next president of the United States. Then it's over. It's over. So there's a clear choice. It's a clearer choice than any choice I've ever seen in my lifetime. And I got to tell you, I say this on behalf of my wife and our daughter's traveling along with us. You'll appreciate her name is Charlotte. Charlotte's a recent college graduate. She's babysitting her parents this fall. But she actually has a job that she starts in December. I'm excited for her. But I will tell you, to know the Pences is to know a family. To know the Trumps is to know a family. I mean, when we first started talking about this, he invited us to come out and spend some time together as families. And I found out that there's some things he and I shared. I mean, my grandfather immigrated to this country from Ireland when he was about our son's age, and Donald Trump's grandfather immigrated to this country. His dad built a business with his bare hands. It was a great success. My dad built a little gas station business in a small town in southern Indiana. We were both raised to believe that to whom much is given, much will be required. And so for Donald Trump, that meant that the kid from Queens went to Manhattan Island and built the big buildings. And a global name. For me, it was a calling into public service. A desire to serve my hometown in Congress. And never imagining I could be governor of the state that I love. And it's inconceivable to me that I could ever be standing here with you in this role. You know, I tell people that other than a whole lot of zeros, Donald Trump and I really have a lot in common. Straight out the door. And that's a belief. That's a belief in the American dream. I mean, for us, it's not a cliche. Because we lived it. I can't even imagine what that Irishman is thinking looking down today. Richard Michael Cawley is who Michael Richard Pence was named after. Except maybe he's looking down today and saying he was right. When he got on that boat and he came across what he always would call the pond for the rest of his days, the Atlantic, he came here because the tradition of our family is that his mother said there's a future there for you. And what she meant by that is that in America, anybody can be anybody. If you work hard, you play by the rules, you roll your sleeves up. And I just want to promise you, if Donald Trump and I have the privilege of serving you in the highest and the second highest office in the land, we're going to get up every day and fight to revive the American dream for every American, regardless of race or creed or color or gender or area code or income. We're going to open doors of educational opportunity. We're going to open up jobs and opportunities to every American, and the American dream is going to come alive again. And it will define our next century. In these divided times, Donald Trump and I will always believe that there's always so much more that unites us in these United States than will ever divide us. And it's faith in the American dream, and it's ultimately faith in Him who helped our ancestors find their way to these wilderness shores and to build a nation based on freedom, on personal responsibility, on merit, on rugged individualism. To frame this government around common sense and common values. And so as Karen and I get ready to slip away and head back to the Hoosier State tonight, let me first just thank you for coming tonight. I know I'm not the main event, so just thank you so much. This is very humbling. Says he always does that. Number one, I want you to work your hearts out the next 28 days. I want you to go tell somebody. I mean, I hope you didn't come out here to these fairgrounds to just hear a speech. That's not what this is about. I mean, Donald Trump is always the first one to tell me when we pull into an event and see the tens of thousands of people that come out for him. He'll look at me and say with characteristic modesty, he'll say, "No, Mike, this isn't about me. This isn't about us. This isn't even about a political party. This is a movement of the American people, and the American people are going to make America great again." Because you've got to go tell somebody. You've got to go tell somebody. So I want you to leave here today. I want you to leave here today recognizing it's pretty much 2-on-1 out there every day with the media doing half of Hillary Clinton's work for her. Right? I mean, literally. I mean, it just is. I got to turn the television on in the morning with a stick. I just don't even know. I don't even know what's going to be there. But I think the reason this movement continues to grow, continues to expand, is because neighbors are talking to neighbors, co-workers are talking to co-workers. So I'm just telling you, just really plainly, on behalf of Donald Trump, go tell somebody. Go tell somebody that America can be strong again. Go tell somebody that we can get this economy rolling again here in North Carolina, across the country. Go tell somebody that, you know what, there are jurists out there, men and women, who are ready to step into the courts all across the land and uphold our Constitution, and that and that we can have honesty and expectation and transparency in public life again. And it all comes the day that we elect Donald Trump as president of the United States. Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. You know, a lot of times in my lifetime, elections have come down to kind of being, I'm sure this is never true in North Carolina, but sometimes back in Indiana, it's like, if you elect this person, things will get this much better. If you elect this person, then it'll still get about that much better. Right? I mean, sometimes there's not a dime's worth of difference between the two parties. Let's be honest. This isn't such a time. I mean, in this time, here's the question. Go tell your neighbors and friends, co-workers at work, at worship, stop people outside the drugstore, over a backyard fence, and just tell them, look, this is a choice. This is a choice between up and down. This choice whether we're going to continue to go down the hill to a weaker America at home and abroad, to a struggling American economy, to diminishing opportunities for our children and grandchildren, walking farther away from our most cherished constitutional traditions and expectations in public life, or whether we are going to stop and plant our feet and turn around and march back up the hill to a stronger, more prosperous America built on our constitutional traditions and our highest ideals. That's what this choice is. It's up or down. And so you got to go tell somebody. You got to go tell somebody. And right after you get done doing that, it's 28 days, everybody. It's going to go by in a blink. All right? But when you do it, I would tell you do one more thing, if you're inclined, as our little family is. I said, in these challenging times, in our family, you know, we were deeply humbled to be invited to do this. Deeply humbled, never imagined it would come our way, but we did it because I believe this country's in a lot of trouble. And I believe now is the time for all of us to do all that we can with our time, our talent, our treasure. And you reaching out to a friend who's known you for years and saying, no, for real, here's why we need to elect Donald Trump as the next president of the United States. That is 1,000 times more influential than every newspaper article, every television program, every radio program, everything that ever comes across the transom. So go tell somebody. And then there's one other person I'd like you to tell, if you're inclined. You know, I truly do believe in this challenging time that if at your house you do what we do at our house, if occasionally you bow the head, you bend the knee, it'd be a good time to do it. Because I still believe what's been true for millennia in these challenging times for America, in these times of great uncertainty, I still believe with all my heart that if his people who are called by his name will humble themselves and pray, he'll hear again from heaven, and he will heal our land. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So to the congressmen, to all of you who are gathered here today, thank you. We're deeply humbled by your time tonight. We're encouraged by your enthusiasm. In North Carolina, let's just roll our sleeves up. Let's say for the next 28 days, we will not rest. We will not relent until we make Donald Trump the 45th President of the United States of America, and we will make America great again. Let's go get it done. Let's get it done, North Carolina. Victory goes right through this state. Thank you. God bless you.